Hello, everyone. I'm Elaine Cercado, an executive coach, trainer, facilitator, consultant, and director of POWERinU Training and Coaching Philippines. And I welcome you to this complimentary webinar, Managing the Future, Understanding Generational Dynamics and Future Business Realities. Before I introduce the speaker, let me share briefly about POWERinU. Anchored in our faith and values, we collaborate to empower individuals and organizations to achieve sustainable results through value-adding consulting solutions. We take pride in our values of being customer-centric, change advocates, passionate learners, and entrepreneurial leaders. We are a consulting, training, and coaching company with established global partners, and we offer knowledge, expertise, and experience of a team of internationally certified high-caliber trainers, consultants, and coaches with experience in various industries across Asia Pacific. So you could see the certifications on your screen right now. We have served a plethora of clients in just 8 years since we started in 2016 in the Philippines. And we have been offering this complimentary webinar since 2019. So this is our 5th year of doing so. Now, let me introduce our guest speaker for tonight. I'm very honored to have our guest speaker, Mr. Alfredo Del Rosario Jr. Mr. Alfredo Del Rosario Jr., or Fred, as we've called him, was Director, President, and CEO of Philippine Realty and Holdings Corporation. During his almost 7-year management of the company, he shepherded its turnaround from post-rehabilitation status to full normal operations. He organized the company's in-house sales organization that sold almost all the units in the two key condominium projects of the company. He oversaw the planning of the company's next generation undertakings, particularly the luxury condominium building in BGC, or Bonifacio Global City as it's known. He also held various board level and executive positions in the company's 4 subsidiaries. Prior to Phil Realty, Fred was the Executive Vice President, Head of the Asset Management and Remedial Group of the Rizal Commercial Banking Corporation. He was also Director of 2 other subsidiaries of the Unibank, one of which he served as Chairman and President. He still presently serves as a Director of one of the bank subsidiaries, namely Rizal Microbank. Fred started his professional career in the human resources field, where he gained his expertise in management, training, labor operations, and negotiations. His HR experience culminated during his term as Senior Vice President and Head of Human Resources and Administration for Asian Bank Corporation from 1991 to 1994. He then went on to the next levels of his corporate career as he crossed over from staff to line work and from one functional area to another. He was the SVP and head of the branch banking division of Asian Bank, SVP and head of HR, Information Technology and Trust and Investment Division of AB Capital and Investment Corporation from 2000 to 2006. Moreover, he's been appointed as a member of the board of Arroyo University, a FINMA company, a member of the Management Association of the Philippines, and the Personnel Management Association of the Philippines, or PIMA, as it's known, for many years. He's an active member of the Camera Club of the Philippines, having served as board member from 2014 to 2020 and its president in 2019. Fred obtained his degree in Bachelor of Science in Management from Ateneo de Manila University. He has taken up units towards an MBA degree at the Ateneo Graduate School, and he also took up law subjects, leading to a Juris Doctor degree for 3 years at the Ateneo Law School. Fred had the privilege of having been in a unique vantage point, particularly during the latter part of his career, to experience and work within multi-generational organizations, from within boards of directors to the senior management team. Wow, it's such an honor to have our guest speaker for tonight. So everyone, let us all welcome Mr. Fred Del Rosario. Fred, over to you.
Thank you, Elaine. I would like to thank everyone for being here tonight. Let me see if I can do this right. Okay, let's go back.
You're showing it. You're showing your materials.
Okay,
Fred.
Thank you. Let me start off by getting past the very nice introduction that that Elaine had done earlier. But let me also thank Elaine and for inviting me, and also for Trina for managing tonight's presentation. Tonight, I would like to share with you my thoughts and insights on the topic managing the future, the understanding the generational dynamics and the future business realities. For sure, you have already attended various seminars and webinars that touch upon the topic of management, factors that affect and will affect the practice of management. For tonight, I would like to somewhat veer away from the usual topic, maybe present it somewhat in a slightly different view of how that future may look like. A future no longer in our hands, but in the hands of future leaders and managers. The future is now being managed by a group of very young generation, young managers. But maybe before we get into that, we'll first go in, because I'm a long-time trainer. I'd like to always keep discussions guided by some objectives. So for this webinar, I would like for us to accomplish the following goals. With the inputs we will share during the next 30 to 40 minutes, we hope you will be able to, number one, appreciate the significance of one of the major intergenerational events happening at this time and for some years to come. Number two, to become familiar with the profile, perspective, and thinking of the different human generations currently in existence. Next, be aware of one's organizational generational composition. And lastly, begin formulating change management strategies to harmonize the differences between and among workforce generations for effective enterprise continuity. Having set the webinar objectives in place, we can then move along the different major aspects that I think will influence the management of the future from the standpoint of those who will eventually take over. Let me go through them briefly. We'll talk about the great wealth transfer and its magnitude. Next, who will be the recipients? And what will this transfer impact on the future of society, the economy, and the business in general? And from the overall worldview, I'd like to see if we can relate it to some extent to our local perspective. And finally, we'll touch on some ideas on how to plan for the future, given the ideas and insights we would have come across in the next few minutes. For most of the data that I will be presenting throughout my presentation tonight, I will be drawing largely from US and Western sourced materials, no, which are all available online, as they are more updated than what are available elsewhere. No? So first, let's talk about the Great Wealth Transfer. What is it? Let's start that discussion of the future with what has happened in the past and what's currently transpiring. For our purposes tonight, I will be discussing events happening in the US as our reference. But as you very well know, anything that happens in the US has its ripples throughout the entire world. No? So that's where we are using it. That's why we're using the US as the reference. The United States is currently going through the early stages of what is being tagged as the Great Wealth Transfer, a massive multi-generational avalanche of cash and assets sliding down from the silent generation and baby boomers to the Gen X, the Millennials, and Gen Z. We'll define these generations in more detail later. In all, the transfer comprises some $84 trillion or so in wealth, according to estimates from Cerulli Associates, with approximately 72.6 trillion headed for the heirs, and the remaining 12 trillion or so being donated to charity. The Great Wealth Transfer is said to be the largest flow of generational capital ever witnessed in human history, with an estimated $84 trillion in the US itself, or 5.5 trillion pounds in the United Kingdom. This transfer will reshape the financial landscape and create a ripple effect on the economy, technology, and culture. The sheer size of this transfer presents both opportunities and challenges for the millennial and the Gen X recipients. According to Hale Berzadi, a North American head of Citi Private Bank, about 1,000 billionaires are expected to pass more than $5.2 trillion to their children over the next 20 to 30 years. The transfer will also happen to charities. And a good number of billionaires will be transferring assets to different philanthropies and their own foundations. So there's a huge amount of wealth that's really changing hands. Now, who are the recipients or the inheritors of this massive wealth transfer? They are primarily Gen X, born between 1965 and 1980, currently aged 44 and 59. The Millennials, born between 1981 and 1996, aged 28 to 43 as of today. And Gen Zs, born between 1997 and 2013, currently 11 years old to 27 years old. The last two are collectively referred to as Zennials. Now, these generations possess unique characteristics and values that differentiate them from the baby boomer generation. By the way, it's really XYZ, no? Millennials are really Gen Y. Now, here's a graph of the wealth distribution by generation through the year 2045. You will note that the bulk of the wealth will be inherited by Gen X and Y or the millennials. Let me now shift our discussion for a little while from the money angle to the other factors that tell us more about the different generations, eventually focusing our attention to the generation that will take over the business, direct the future, and manage the organization that will generate future results, the millennials. By the way, there are different year ranges attributed to millennials, or otherwise known as Generation Y. Most research institutions agree that the birth range of Gen Y is between 1981 to 1996. But some, like CNN, BBC, citing National Records of Scotland, and National Resolution Foundation, and the US Government Accountability Office, define millennials as those born between 1981 or 1982 and 2000. So for purposes of this, this discussion, we will use 1981 to 2000 as the years of the millennial. The millennials and the three generations before it, the silent generation, the baby boomers, and Gen X, have similarities as well as stark differences across selected characteristics. And these are environmental and social influences, core values, financial attitude, defining communication medium, work-life balance, and interaction style. With regards to environmental and social influences, the silent generation lived during the Great Depression, the New Deal, and World War II. This is in the US. No? But again, generally, there is some correlation between the US experience and the rest of the world. Some were exposed to the Korean War. The first satellites were launched during their time. The baby boomers lived through the post-war era, but nevertheless, they experienced the fear associated with the potential conflict among the global forces during the Cold War. On the bright side, they also experienced mankind's pioneering technological adventure into space and the beginnings of recognition of civil and women's rights. During their time, Watergate and Vietnam War happened. Gen X predominant influences include the 70s energy crisis, the stock market crash, and subsequent recession. During their time, MTV was born. I don't think MTV is still around. They saw the first Gulf War and were exposed to Reaganomics. The millennials were born during the advent and worldwide expansion of the internet and social media. They also had their share of societal fear with the 9/11 terrorist event and the second Gulf War, and the subsequent recession arising from this crisis. As far as core values are concerned, the silent generation upholds discipline, duty to family, patriotism, and sacrifice, while baby boomers consider equal rights, optimism, individualism, personal growth, and experimentation as essential. The next generation gives importance to diversity, education, forward thinking, work-life balance, and they strive for emotional security. And finally, the millennials are committed to global community, self-confidence, entrepreneurial values, racial diversity, and dependence on technology. On financial attitude, the silent generation, having experienced the hardship of war and in its aftermath, considers financial security as paramount. Baby boomers, on the other hand, are more comfortable spending but feel a sense of responsibility towards supporting extended families. The Generation X are planners, but they feel the need to save more money than the baby boomers. The millennials are more risk-averse, and they are leery of the stock market or such type of investments. For predominant communication medium, the telephone cuts across the first three generations, no? With radio and television as passive means of communication for the silent generation and baby boomers. The desktop computer, while having been introduced during the baby boomers' later years, has become the predominant medium of interactive communication for Gen X. For the millennials, it's the mobile devices, smartphones, laptops, tablets, and social media. In the case of work-life balance, The silent generation gives importance to strong work ethic and loyalty, and they measure success by timelines and productivity. The baby boomers believe that they need to work hard in order to get to enjoy its fruits later. They measure success by hours worked and relationships established. For the Gen Xers, their concept of work-life balance is working smarter, not more, and they value control of their time. For millennials, they value flexibility in where, when, and how they work. They prefer a mix of work from home and in-person or on-site work environment. The generations have stark difference in interaction style. No? A hierarchical model but with strong interpersonal skills characterizes the silent generations type. That's why the silent generation is very keen on the hierarchy, seniority, etc. No? The baby boomers are more comfortable with moderate collaboration and interaction. They are also predominantly hierarchical and prefer face-to-face dealings. Gen X are highly collaborative and likes interaction. They are more direct and adaptable. Finally, the millennials lean towards very high collaboration and interaction, but they demand autonomy. The researchers noted that these characteristics are but a small sampling of those that have been considered. Not every person in a generation will share all the characteristics indicated. Moreover, members of each generation may have overlapping characteristics with members of the preceding or succeeding generations. Appreciating these generational differences will be useful to our understanding of how to manage in an intergenerational organization, as we will discuss in the latter portion of the webinar. Now, let me go back to the great wealth transfer. Why is this transfer important? One may ask. For one, it involves a staggeringly huge amount never experienced in previous intergenerational wealth transfers. Consequently, the transfer of wealth to millennials and Gen Z is expected to have significant impact on the world economy and in shaping the future. As the old adage says, he who has the gold makes the rules. A corollary saying goes, he who has the wealth rules. On the economy, it will have a profound impact on the job market. With newfound financial resources, it is likely for some to pursue entrepreneurial or to take some time off from working and explore travel and other interests. This influx of wealth could also lead to increased demand for luxury goods and services, thus increased activity for these industries. The transfer of wealth from baby boomers to younger generations is projected to increase millennial wealth fivefold by the year 2030. This substantial increase in wealth is likely to lead to increased consumer spending, investments, and economic growth. As money is channeled into investments, the stock market could experience a surge. Actually, it is already happening that the millennial generation is already taking over the levers of corporate engines, as when they give birth and turbocharge the growth of a great number of startup companies. Millennial entrepreneurs like Mark Zuckerberg, founder of Facebook, now morphed into Meta, Brian Chesky and Joe Gebbia, the co-founders of Airbnb, are two examples. The wealth transfer could potentially change the dynamics of the housing market. Millennials who have struggled with high interest rates and unaffordable home prices may finally be able to enter the market and cause a surge in demand for homes. And this could lead to an increase in real estate prices and further stimulating the economy through increased spending on home furnishings and maintenance. On shaping the future, Gen Y and Z have strong ethics driven by sustainability and social justice. Their values have influenced the way companies operate, with an increased focus on addressing environmental and social issues. Xenials have high expectation of companies and support those that align with their principles. Technology has played a key role in empowering Xenials. Access to information, the rise of investment apps and cryptocurrencies, and the ability to make impact at scale have all contributed to their influence. As digital natives, Xenials have a deep understanding of technology and are using it to implement their philosophy and shape the future of business and finance. Now, let's now deep dive into the millennials, since they will be the generation that will drive the near and medium future. Let's get to find out more about their traits and circumstance. Millennials, invariably said to have been born between 1981 to 1999, in 1982 to 1996, or 1980 to 2000, are digital natives. They are born and raised in the internet age, with very distinctive behaviors and expectations. Their far-reaching influence over the attitudes of other generations has made them game changers in all spheres of cultural and economic life. Currently numbering about 92 million in the US, millennials and Gen Z each make up close to 1/4 of the North American population. Combined, the Xennials at nearly 50% constitute the largest demographic in the US workforce, and they are just beginning their careers and will be an important engine of economic growth in the decades to come. Okay, they are the most racially diverse generation in US history. 44% are non-white. They're more culturally diverse due to immigration and open to alternative lifestyle choices. Although many will eventually marry, 69% are single. They are mostly educated. Fewer than 8% of those surveyed lack a college degree. So that means 92% have college degrees, and more than half hold an advanced degree. Their distinct behaviors and outspoken passions make millennials major influencers of others. They've led the way in the adoption of technology, social media, and the sharing economy. As a group, millennials contrast with baby boomers in significant ways. They are more likely to be risk averse, having seen their parents struggle. They can be very cautious about money and disinclined to take on risk. They're clear-eyed about goals. Rather than passively benchmarking returns, they are set of life goals. Socially conscious. They are often willing to sacrifice returns for social benefits. And they are open to a wider range of investment options. So for purposes of those who are in finance, although they are risk averse, they are more likely than their parents to consider alternative investment funds, financial technology or fintech firms, and non-traditional providers such as Google, Alibaba. It would seem that being tech savvy allows them to take a little comfort in new or alternative options, provided they are tech-based. Millennials pose a major challenge and a tremendous opportunity. The competition for the millennial market is going to be fierce. All types of consumer products and investment providers, from full-service banks, investment advisors, mutual funds, to alternative investment firms, private banks, real estate companies, luxury product manufacturers, and family offices, they plan to target the millennials to some extent over the next 5 years. In many ways, however, millennials are still forming their views about investment and other personal matters. As a result, their views sometimes seem contradictory. Product and service providers such as investment advisors and the like will need to be sensitive to this when developing relationships with them. Now, learning how best to attract and retain millennials will require acute sensitivity to their investment priorities, future life goals, and digital expectations. It will take more than a few smartphone apps and social media pages. So instead, it calls for a bottom-up rethinking by wealth management providers of product portfolios, advisory approaches, business models, and marketing plans. Research also shows that the winners in the wealth marketplace, for instance, will be those firms that reinvent themselves, reaching out to millennials with digital technology and a true omni-channel experience. Now, moving on to the Philippine scenario, while the scale may be vastly different, the events and generational profile will be quite similar. Of course, it's just a question of scale. Now, here is how the Filipino wealth distribution looks like. Note that our rich, the highest cluster of income class, is defined as with family income of about 182,000 per month. That's $3,192 a month, or 38,315 per year at an exchange rate of 57 to 1. And there's only less than 1% belonging to this bracket. As I said, it's a matter of scale. Quite a tremendous scale difference, though. I would have to qualify as well that this chart might be dated and only refers to family income and not assets or net worth, which could be significantly different. Now, when we look at the Filipino millennials, there doesn't seem to be that much of a difference from those described in the US materials. Again, as I said, the US leads the trend, so to speak. Following is a compendium of slides or infographics generated by Rappler. According to the 2010 census, there are an estimated 25 million millennials, defined here as age 15 to 29, and there are 12.9 males and 12.6 million females. So almost equal distribution. In terms of career, as of 2015, 45% of Filipino millennials aged 15 to 34 were employed and comprised more than half, or 53% of the working population. As to OFWs, more than half of the total overseas working population are Filipinos, with 25 to 29-year-old bracket comprising the highest percentage of workers abroad. Unsurprisingly, the Filipino millennials aged 20 to 29 are the most common users of Facebook. As you may have noticed in your millennial children, those of you who have already children at this millennial age, Filipino millennials are like watching TV, texting, listening to music, playing sports, meeting up with friends, surfing, or going online and reading. Pretty much what we to do during our time, with the exception of surfing, since there was no internet yet during our days. I don't think their most common unhealthy foods are any different from our favorites. The millennials constitute a little under 50% of Filipino workers as of May 2016. There are a few more traits and qualities of Filipino millennials that need to be more closely examined, as some of them may in fact be myths. The first is the myth that Filipino millennials are obsessed with tech and social media. But the fact is Filipino millennials need to be adept to adapt. Filipino millennials revolve around the utilization of technology whenever possible to save energy, time, and money. For example, besides face-to-face headhunting, we use social media platforms to recruit quicker to a wider network and connect with potential candidates. In fact, first-level job interviews are already conducted online. While it may appear that millennials spend a big portion of their time on social media for instant connection and with family and friends and family, voicing out opinions and sharing daily updates, they actually are stepping up their game and working at being adept with many technological advances these days, AI in particular. Another one is the myth that Filipino millennials are spoiled and entitled. But the fact is, Filipino millennials are straightforward and outspoken. Millennials have developed both the attitude and courage to be more forward with their thoughts through social media platforms. I believe they are much more comfortable to voice out their opinions, whether related to politics, career trends, or economy. And why do you think that is so? Well, it's simply because they were brought up that way by the boomers. I am certainly guilty of encouraging my children to speak out their mind. Finally, the myth that Filipino millennials are money-driven. But the fact is, the Filipino millennials are family-oriented. Millennials may have a different approach on how they invest or spend their hard-earned money, but it doesn't mean that they are money-driven. It is only a small factor why they work. Some millennials might be confused about their career path that they wanted to pursue, but most of them are very passionate when it comes to their work. However, they care a lot about their family and would readily consider a job or career change if doing so will be better for the family. So, given all this, how will millennials change the way things are managed? Are millennials really that different? The answer is yes, profoundly so. Millennials will change the world decisively more than any other generation. Millennials will continue to disrupt how the world communicates, how we read and write and relate. Millennials are disrupting retail, hospitality, real estate, housing, transportation, entertainment, and travel, and they will soon radically change higher education. Millennials are altering the very social fabric of the world, America, Western Europe, Western Hemisphere, etc., and the greater Asia. They're waiting longer to get married and have children. And they're less likely than any other generation to identify with specific religion or political parties. Defined by their lack of attachment to institutions and traditions, millennials change jobs more often than other generations. More than half say they are currently looking for a new job. Millennials are also changing the very will of the world, so we too must change. Organizational cultures need to change from old will to new will. And there are 6 functional changes that Gallup, through its chairman and CEO, Jim Clifton, has identified in the organizational culture that millennials have brought about. We need to recognize and acknowledge these big 6. Number 1, millennials don't just work for a paycheck. They want a purpose. For millennials, work must have meaning. They want to work for organizations with a mission and purpose. Back in the old days, baby boomers like me didn't necessarily need meaning in our jobs. We just wanted a paycheck. Our mission and purpose were 100% our family and communities. For millennials, compensation is important and must be fair, but it's no longer the driver. The emphasis for this generation has switched from paycheck to purpose, and so must our culture. Number 2, Millennials are not pursuing job satisfaction. They are pursuing development. Most millennials don't care about the bells and whistles found in many workplaces today. The ping pong tables, the free coffee, free food that the companies offer to try to create job satisfaction. Giving out toys and entitlements is a leadership mistake. And worse, it's condescending. Purpose and development drive this generation. Number three, millennials don't want bosses. They want coaches. The role of an old-style boss is command and control. Millennials care about having managers who can coach them, who value them as both people and employees, and who help them understand and build their strengths. The old-style boss of command and control is most unappealing to them. Okay, millennials aren't that young anymore. The generation is currently between 24 and 39 years old, meaning some millennials are nearly 2 decades into their careers. These aren't just the future leaders of industry. They're already running the show as managers. The average age of first-time manager in the US, at least, and should be this, is about 30, an age milestone that half of the millennial generation has now reached. This is likely not too different from what we have here. Gen Z, between 18 and 23 years old, is also entering the workforce. These two generations, all digital natives, are going to shape the workplace of the future. Being tech-savvy, socially conscious, and value-driven, millennial managers bring a unique set of qualities and perspective to leadership. Going back to the big six, millennials don't want annual reviews. They want ongoing conversations. The way millennials communicate, texting, tweeting, Vibering, Telegramming, WhatsApping, Messengering, Facebooking, Skyping, etc., is now real-time and continuous. This dramatically affects the workplace because millennials are accustomed to constant communication and feedback. Annual reviews no longer work. Fifth, millennials don't want to fix their weaknesses. They want to develop their strengths. The Gallup research has discovered that weaknesses never develop into strengths, while strengths develop infinitely. This is arguably the biggest discovery Gallup or any organization has ever made on the subject of human development in the workplace. Organizations shouldn't ignore weaknesses. Rather, they should minimize weaknesses and maximize strengths. It is recommended that organizations transition to strengths-based cultures, or they won't attract and keep their stars. And finally, the number six, big six, it's not just my job, it's my life. One of Gallup's most important discoveries is that everyone in the world wants a good job. This is especially true for millennials. More so than ever in the history of corporate culture, employees are asking, does this organization value my strengths and my contribution? Does this organization give me the chance to do what I do best every day? Because for millennials, a job is no longer just a job. It's their life as well. In summary, the 6 functional changes that millennials have brought about in the organization's culture have shifted leadership views and focus. From my paycheck to my purpose, from my satisfaction to my development, to my boss to my coach, to annual review to my ongoing conversations, and from my weaknesses to my strengths. Now, going back to the millennials' managerial approach, how are they different from those of previous generations? Well, first of all, they embrace technology. Because they grew up in a digital age, they are exceptionally comfortable with technology. Technology excites them. This enables them to be more efficient in the workplace. They are endlessly curious. Living in a forever changing world, millennials are naturally curious. And this endless curiosity of millennial managers drives them to be inquisitive, adaptable, and open to new ideas and experiences. This quality is a powerful force for positive change in the workforce or in the workplace. They are less judgmental and celebrate authenticity. Millennial managers don't care about your tattoos, your personal life, or your style of dressing. Instead, they focus on your skills, contributions, and the unique perspective you bring to the team. Adaptability as a strength. In an ever-changing world, adaptability is a crucial leadership trait. Millennial managers are excellent at changing direction and tailoring their plans to focus on unexpected challenges. They are purpose-driven. The leadership style of millennial managers is purpose-driven. They put the greater good first and work to connect their teams with worthwhile goals. You don't have to convince them about the need to take care of the environment, to protect rights of communities. And this focus on purpose results in a more motivated and engaged workforce. They value transparency and communicate more openly. Millennial managers prioritize creating a workforce culture where transparency is a cornerstone, fostering open and honest communication among team members. Collaboration over competition. Millennials value collaboration over being competitive. They encourage cross-functional teamwork and open communication, fostering a sense of unity. I know, for example, that in my daughter's workplace, they usually have a sort of town hall meetings where all the departments are able to join in. I mean, they just listen to what's happening in the other departments. So it's more cross-functional. Now, feedback and recognition. Regular feedback and recognition are key components of millennial leadership. They believe that constructive feedback creates growth, and recognizing achievement boosts morale and commitment. So how do we prepare the organization for millennial management and millennials, on the other hand, for organizational management? With all that background and reference, it is quite clear that an organizational assessment is the first step. In this process, we need to answer the following essential questions. First, what is the generational mix of your organization? How many baby boomers, X, Y, Gen X, Y, and Z do we have in the company? What generation is managing the critical functions? Who's on top or near the top of our critical departments? Sales, finance, HR, operations. When will your baby boomers fully retire? Most of them are probably retired already, but when will the last of them be out? Do they have a ready replacement? Do we have a succession plan, an assumption training plan? And if we do, are the replacements experienced enough? Are they already undergoing training to assume the roles? And then finally, what changes do we plan to implement to align our organizational aspirations with those of our millennial workforce? Are there policies and practices that are diametrically opposed to the aspirations, values, and attitudes of our millennial workforce? And how do we plan to institute changes to achieve those alignment? That question is very key. Now, for a successful future, it is essential that the next generation be won over even now. Here are some recommended strategies to win over the next generation so that they will not only be ready to take over the reins, but to do so with complete synchronicity to the company's destination and journey. First, as I already intimated earlier, there is a need to align business values, practices, and resources to the next generation's framework. Second, there must be an intergenerational continuity and change planning. The need for a corporate succession plan is not just to satisfy the filling of the boxes that will become vacant. It may as well require the changing of the boxes themselves, of the roles, to redesign or conform the seat to the pilot's needs, as so to speak, more than the other way around. Third, as may be gleaned from your organizational assessment, your generational matrix may be such that you have multi-generational groups that may have to coexist for quite some time. There will be a need to plan for managing these groups so that they could work well together given or despite their differences and peculiarities. The millennials will not only be in your work organization, but they will also be out there among your clientele groups. You need to engage with and educate both and to adapt your structure and systems to address the needs of both. For your internal millennials, but more so for your millennial clients, you need to tailor your organization or corporate solutions to align with their needs and expectations. So leverage best of breed technology. Mostly those solutions such as AI, virtual but near real experience channels, online order fulfillment apps, cloud-based database, and others are just a few of the examples of best of breed technologies that, of course, the millennials understand very well. In conclusion, allow me to offer two takeaways that are obvious but could sometimes be missed. No? The first is that the new generation will be taking over sooner or later. They're in the queue now, if not already taking over. They will manage things differently and in accordance with their life and world views, not necessarily your own. While there are similarities, there are quite a number of differences between the previous generation of management and the incoming that need to be addressed now to ensure a successful future. Okay, thank you for listening, and I would now like to turn the webinar over to Elaine for the Q&A portion.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Fred. Wow, what a very rich research that you have shared, and also that the insights that you have shared are very, very valuable. Thank you so much, Fred. I'd like to just start off with a question that we got from the registrants. And as I'm saying that or asking that, I'd like to encourage the ones who are in Zoom right now to just type on the chat box their questions. We only have about 7 minutes left before we close, so please type fast, and we'll try to get the answers from Fred during the time left. Will organizations be better managed by the younger generations? And why do you say that, whatever the answer is, Fred, why would you say that, and how will they better manage? If that's the answer.
Well, to be fair, I guess it really depends on the situation or the environment that you find yourself in. So it will be unfair naman to the older generation to say that the younger generation will be able to manage their environment or their situation better. Definitely, the younger generation will be able to manage their environment much better than the older generation. But remember that our generation has been very well known for resistance to change. We don't want change, drastic changes. We want it slow and easy and so forth. But the younger generations, they don't really have too much patience for waiting for everybody to get to change. They are always in a hurry. That's why they're, especially because they are tech savvy. They have the ability to use technology to get to the results much faster. So the answer is yes, they will be better in managing the future because that's their generation. They have the technology, they're used to that technology. Siyempre, if you show them a phonograph, they probably don't know how to operate it, no? Better than
For
this.
sure.
And much better sila sa smartphone and so forth, which of course our generation would probably have some difficulty in trying to be good at.
So what you're saying, Fred, each generation, of course, as you mentioned, has their own characteristics, own strengths, as well as gaps. And so for the generation, for the future, they will better manage it. And so that's what we did as well. By the way, I'm X from Gen X, so
You
I
still
was still a little bit open to change. But I hear what you're saying, and I have a question here, a very good one that came in. The want for my development has a caveat. You know, when you had this slide where you have the two from what was that again? Let me just look at the what you showed earlier. You know, from my satisfaction to my development, my paycheck to my purpose, my boss to my coach. You know that slide.
yeah.
Now, the millennials or the future, they want to be developed, but will not go to the extra mile. They want it spoon fed. How do you handle that? That was a question that came in.
Okay, good question. As we mentioned earlier, the millennials are still in some sort of a flux in terms of their what they really are, what they really want. No, they could be very clear in terms of in terms of certain things, but there could be sometimes contradiction in them. No, just like I guess it's like in any generation, we also pass through those contradictory days, di ba? When we want one thing, but and yet we're really looking at another. No? Yes, I think it is true that they want the ability to develop. No, not that siguro naman that they want it to be spoon fed. No. I think that the comparison earlier about development versus weakness, no, they want to be able to they want their organization to focus more on their strengths rather than on their weaknesses. No, yes, there could be some millennials that would prefer to be spoon fed, but to a large extent. Parang expected na nila yun eh. I mean, that's a reason why I guess this finding that they would prefer organizations that would have those kinds of things in place already. No? So in effect, parang if you don't provide that as a matter of course, they'd probably leave. Yeah. And that's been the experience, diba, of some of the companies. I think it follows the same logic na if the millennials are picking their organization and they would want to work in an organization that has purpose and that the purpose is being supported by development programs that are provided within the organization, then they would think that is already supposed to be in place. So some
So
of
there
us,
are, what I'm hearing is there are expectations. And again, in the same way that we had our expectations, when it was also our time entering or developing or progressing in our careers. But I guess now there are more options, more channels, more platforms. And yeah, and that's a characteristic of their generation, as you mentioned. One last question, Fred.
Sure.
And unfortunately, I still have about 3 questions in the chat box, but unfortunately, time is almost up. And it's been really a very rich presentation, in terms of the materials that you share, the research, the insights. And I think very interesting, especially I especially personally learned on the last part,
Yeah.
about the changes and moving forward and how they will take over. And hopefully we can have a second part to continue on how that future will really look like. No, I'd love to see that.
Research is very sparse. No, I think there's a lot more that can be learned.
Definitely. And so one last question before we end, and we're gonna be just extending for a couple of minutes if the ones in the Zoom can just stay on. How do you make, despite the complete question is this, no? It's a bit long, but I'll try to yeah, to just read it out as it is. Despite the technology and availability of the vast information out there, they would prefer that they are told what to do or how to get to success. Just like what we were saying earlier, spoon feeding in a way. So the question is, how do you make them think strategically? Is it through coaching? But what if their managers are millennials as well? Same generation.
Okay.
What do you think about this? Yeah.
Yeah, well, there are two ways of looking at it. Number one, may premise kasi. The premise is that they would prefer that they are told what to do. And the research seems to indicate that it's not, because they want autonomy. So they don't want to be told what to do. In fact, more often than not, what happens is they research ahead of others,
Yeah.
and I guess they will, especially if it's contradictory, they will probably confront you to say that there is a better way, and this is the better way that I found. No, sometimes it's our pride that will say, well, I'm older here, so I should know better. But that's the findings of the research na that the millennials are more into being autonomous.
Mhm.
Don't want to be told what to do.
Yeah.
Want to direct their own life. The captains of their own lives.
Yes. And in fact, there's a book I remember that affirms that by Dan Pink, Drive, where he talked about the research also behind autonomy, mastery, and there was another one that are the key drivers or motivators for this generation. So thank you so much, Fred. There's a few more, and even those questions sent by the registrants. We'll try to answer them. Some of them were answered through your presentation, but for those which have not been answered, we'll hopefully get some answers from you, Fred, as
Sure.
we send to them as well the email with a webinar link to the recording. So again, thank you. And we learned a lot. We hope to have you again soon, Fred. And before we go, we'd like to just make one quick announcement so you don't miss out. Subscribe at powerinU.com.ph to get updates on learning events that we offer, such as our complimentary webinars, online learning sessions, and face-to-face trainings. And of course, you can access the recording of this webinar through POWERinU's website, Facebook page, and YouTube channel. Before we officially end, we'd like to request for 10 seconds of your time to answer this short poll so we can get your feedback for continuous improvement. You can scan the QR code on the screen or click the link we sent in the chat box. Your responses will help us further improve. So thank you in advance for your feedback. Everyone, thank you again for joining us, and we hope to see you again in our next POWERinU learning event. Thank you and good night.